The Canvas Series, Episode 16. Hey everybody, it's Raph here, and welcome back to another episode of the Canvas Series, a podcast about up-and-coming entrepreneurs and creators and how they're designing their life to build momentum and get results. So the guest for this episode is Mary Young, founder of the Mary Young lifestyle lingerie brand and creator of the Self-Love Club. So right away in the episode, we jump right into how she intentionally built her business and brand. From adopting ethical fashion approaches in her supply chain to being one of the early influencers on Instagram. But right away, one thing you're going to quickly realize is that this is so much more than lingerie. Right? This is a story about Mary building a community and a movement that she believes in. As well, in this episode, we go deep into how she created habits and systems in her life to reclaim her health. For over a decade, Mary suffered from chronic pain, and oftentimes in her life, she was faced with this fork in the road, right? To continue doing what she loves long before she had any of the successes that you see today, or to give it all up and focus entirely on her recovery. So in this episode, it's really about building with purpose, building a business with a mission and a strong why behind it, building the habits and systems to promote physical and mental health, and ultimately how Mary, as an entrepreneur and as someone suffering from chronic pain, designed the life by finding the systems that worked for her. We recorded this episode months ago, and I've been absolutely stoked to get this out to you. So, really excited to have this live. Please let us know what you think, right? It's very simple. All you have to do is take a screenshot, post it on Instagram story, tag Mary at It's Mary Young and myself at canvas.series, and let us know what is your number one takeaway from this episode. So thank you and enjoy the episode. All right, Mary, welcome to the Canvas Series.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Likewise. We've known each other for a number of years now.
I know. I was saying to someone, I think it's like 7 or 8
a number
even.
Of years now. Like even just dating back to, I think, when you first started the Mary Young brand.
Yes.
So we'll definitely dig more into that in the show. Mm-hmm. But to kick things off, I really want to give the audience some context in terms of who you are. And I think to set the stage is to really kind of understand, what are some of the goals and priorities in your personal and professional life that make up you as Mary Young?
Oh, goals. I'm a very big fan of goal setting, so it's a great question. For me personally, my goals are to live a full life, which I think to everyone can mean something different. And for me, that actually means having something professionally that I love. So I've always wanted to be doing things that brought joy to my life through using my hands, building something since I was young all the way till now. So obviously starting a business made a lot of sense, and sort of pushing myself literally to my limits to see what I can do has been a big part of my goal setting in my life. And then with professional, being an entrepreneur, I have to be responsible for a lot. So I think my biggest goals is just trying to do the most by working the least. Right, the whole work smarter, not harder has been a big goal that I've tried to implement this year in 2018 specifically.
For sure. So to help the listeners kind of understand who you are, what is your business all about?
My business. So I have my own company called Mary Young. I wasn't extremely creative when I named it because that's just my full name. And I design lifestyle women's lingerie and loungewear. And we recently introduced men's boxers as well. So we're trying to do a little bit of something for everyone. And we produce everything sustainably and ethically here in Canada. So we want to make sure that we're investing back into the Canadian economy with everything we do.
Perfect. So what is the larger mission, right? I mean, I've looked a lot into, what you have on the website, on YouTube, your social media, and there's definitely a bigger message and a bigger mission that you're trying to promote and really, get that dialogue going. So what is that all about?
The biggest message for me was really to empower people. When I was really, really young, I wanted to be a model actually, and I'm grown at 5'2", and I, at a young age, realized I would not be tall enough to be a model. And the thought that really brought me to why I wanted to be a model is because I felt really good in certain clothes that I wore. And so instead of wanting to just wear the clothes, I thought, why don't I make the clothes that make people feel really good? And so throughout my life, that was sort of why I designed things. I made friends' prom dresses, different things like that. And then when I launched my brand, focusing on lingerie, the biggest focus was to allow women to feel good in their underwear. It is pretty much a necessity. Women wear bras and underwear every single day. And up until what I saw in the industry and when I launched my brand, there were sort of two categories. There was more traditional lingerie, your black lace, La Senza, Victoria's Secret push-up, padded. Sort of if you wear this, then you'll be sexy. And then the other end of the spectrum was maybe your Fruit of the Loom. You kind of buy it in a 5-pack and it works. It's very functional, but you never want anyone to see you in it. But there was never something that made women feel good about what they were wearing that worked for their life. So for me, it was, this is the first thing you put on in the morning. It's a very intimate experience. And if you don't feel good the first 5 minutes of your day, that negativity will follow you. So if you feel really empowered when you start your day, you're going to be empowered throughout the rest of your day. And that's what I really want our lingerie to do.
I love that. So in the early days when you first started off the Mary Young brand, can you walk us through that story, and in particular how this concept of self-love was really baked into it from day one as part of your mission and strategy?
Yeah, so in a roundabout way, I didn't know that it was self-love because I think that term really became more popular in the last, I would say 2 years. So 4 years ago when I was starting it, I was looking at the lingerie industry and I always felt alienated. I never saw myself in the ads. I never cared about what lingerie I was wearing. It was more function and comfort. So I started to understand what that meant to me and that I couldn't be the only woman that felt sort of neglected. And so as I was designing products, it was about comfort. It was about the natural shape. It was about letting women feel good in who they are versus saying, if you look this way, then you're worthy. And if you lift up your breasts or you flatten your stomach or this, then you're worthy. It's no, your natural shape is beautiful and you're already worthy. So that was a big point that I started to work with throughout the beginning of the brand. And that was the main focus. And, all of our keywords and all of our mission statements, everything really goes back to that. And as the brand grew and I had conversations with many different customers and many different women, I started to realize that they felt the way I felt. And now they felt empowered by making this decision to buy lingerie for themselves. And then I realized that they weren't having these conversations with other women. They were really only saying it to me because it was still sort of a taboo subject to talk about feeling, love towards yourself. And that's really when I decided to launch the Self-Love Club, because I knew that these conversations had to happen within our community versus just one-on-one kind of on the sidelines. And also to empower men to be a part of these conversations. This is, this affects both genders, affects everyone. And that's really when the Self-Love Club launched. And it was to encourage everyone to have this conversation about feeling good in themselves and being more empowered to do whatever they want in life.
I love that, right? And you've essentially really, not only started a dialogue on it, but built a community on that as well. And I think that also gets reflected on your Instagram and your content, where I think all your models are, like everyday relatable people doing relatable things. Walk me through that kind of branding strategy. Like, was that a deliberate choice? Or was that just kind of by accident?
It was so deliberate. So for me, when we launched, Instagram was big. It wasn't where it is now, obviously. So it was sort of at the beginning where bloggers now had an Instagram, but there wasn't like influencers yet. But I always remember being on the streetcar and looking on Instagram, and I was looking at, different brands and maybe competitors of mine. I always felt a bit uncomfortable being on a lingerie Instagram profile in public spaces. Like somehow it was like, oh, I'm looking at something that's, seductive or sexual, and I don't want to look at that in public. And I thought, why does it have to be sexualized? Underwear has nothing to do with sexual activities. Obviously, you can choose to buy lingerie for your partner and share that intimate space. But it is a very practical part of everyday life, and it shouldn't be tainted to be overly sexualized. So I want to make sure that anyone would feel comfortable looking at our images anywhere they were. So obviously using, women that are relatable, that you can see yourself in, is number one. To connect with our customers, I want them to know that they can wear our clothes and our garments and feel really good while they do it. So using, quote unquote, real women, all women, even models are real, but just, your everyday average woman, was really empowering to, encourage women to get outside of their comfort zone. And then also making sure that the way that our content is shot isn't shot through the male gaze or in an over-sexualized manner. And it's something that we still deal with. A lot of agencies want to charge extra for models that are working in lingerie, saying that, well, they're half naked, so it costs more. And the reality is there's a lot of shoots where models are fully clothed, but it's extremely sexualized, whereas ours are, yes, half naked, but there's never a sexual, innuendo happening within the context of the shoot. Mm-hmm.
And then, to broaden the discussion on self-love, another area that you commonly get involved with is entrepreneurship,
yes,
right? And you teach, classes on branding and marketing and whatnot. But I'm curious, as an entrepreneur and someone who started off on your own, how did self-love really play a role in your early days and really kept you on track?
Yeah, so in the early days, I didn't realize that self-love was a big necessity for being an entrepreneur. I definitely was hard on myself. I, compared myself to companies that had VC backing, that had, 3 different founders, that were doing, so many more things than I was doing. And I was hard on myself because I wasn't doing enough. And then I realized that I need to show myself love for A, chasing my dreams, and B, doing something that, not everyone does. I'm swimming upstream no matter what, it's going to be hard. And once I started to grasp that, and I mean, I'm still 100% working on that, it's definitely shifted being an entrepreneur to a bit more exciting because I'm not comparing myself to people that are doing, so many more things than me and always falling short, but rather comparing myself to what my 3-month and my 6-month goal was, and did I achieve it, and did I go above it? And then, showing myself love and respect every step of the way.
For sure. And something you said there, you talked about how, there's always something to do and you feel like you can never, take everything off the box. And I think that's applicable for anyone, not just entrepreneurs, busy young professionals, parents, students, whoever it is. So what were some of the, practices and systems you use to kind of keep yourself afloat? Like I know for myself, running is a big thing for me. And I think, like you're a runner as well.
I am, yeah.
Like share some of those systems for us.
So for me, when I first started, I didn't know that I needed systems. That was a hard lesson to learn because I didn't understand that I had to be responsible for my schedule and for what actually would help me work better at work and then, live a better social life and a personal life. So when I first started, I was working from home and there would be some days where I just wouldn't see people 2, 3, 4 days at a time, maybe talk to someone on the phone, but I just wouldn't see anyone. And I realized that wasn't healthy for me as a person. So I became really diligent about, I would actually leave my home every morning. So I would walk to my neighbor coffee shop. Tokyo Smoke is like a 5-minute walk from my place. I'd usually stay for about 20 minutes, a half hour. I know the baristas, know who else was there around 8 a.m. We'd chat, this and that. I'd walk back to my condo. And the second that I walked in, it was like I was walking into my office. Right. So a lot of times when you work for someone else, you have a commute where you transition from being at home to being at work. So your brain sort of transitions into thinking about what you need to do at home to, okay, I'm in work mode. These are the things I need to get done at work. And then tonight I can go back home and relax. It's different when you don't ever leave your home and your home becomes your work and that line blends. So I really left in order to come back and work. And then the end of the day also was really hard because you can work till 1, 2 in the morning and then just do it all over again. So I would always schedule a workout at the end of my day. So usually around 6:30 or 7, I would have a workout scheduled and I maintained those as if it was a meeting with a client or a meeting with, a content creator or something. And I was committed to going. And that was for me how I would normally end my day is I would leave to go to the gym. I would often see friends there. That's how I was socialized with a lot of people the first year and a half. It was either you saw me at the gym or you saw me at the coffee shop when we were working together. So going to the gym was really good. And also the physical activity was so beneficial for dealing with all the stress of starting something new. So I think that those two things, like being able to define the start of your day and build in a routine in the morning, and then find something that will help you end your day on a high note, and then also give you a bit of relief has been really good.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So out of curiosity, what does your calendar look like right now?
Oh, my calendar right now is definitely all over the place. So thankfully I don't work from home anymore. So I actually have to leave and commute. It's a 10-minute walk to my office, I would say. So that's been really nice that I do leave and I do actually go in somewhere and work. On an average day, I'm usually at the office between 9 and 9:30. I still go to Tokyo Smoke first and get a nice matcha before I go in. And I like to get in before my employees so that in that way I can sort of, have a good handle of what's happening that day, who's doing what our priorities are. And then sometimes I'm in meetings. Today I was, doing a small business consultation that I do with other companies. And then I was back at the office. We were packing things to send to Montreal. We're doing a pop-up there shortly. So it kind of depends on what's happening. A lot of it really is maintaining sort of the brand growth. So it's not necessarily like the day-to-day things as much anymore, thankfully. And then again, sometimes it's hard to end my day at 5:30 or 6. So I do have to, schedule things, whether it's meeting a friend for dinner, going to a movie, and forcing myself having a bit of relaxation. Mm-hmm. But I do like the fact that my day is all over the place. That's
so like you schedule all these things in, right?
Yeah. So I'm really a big fan of Gmail and my Google Calendar. I used to like hate digital calendars. I used to always have my notebook, but now I love it. Get the notification. I know where I need to be. I can see when things are, blocked out, when I am away, when I'm here.
For sure. Do you color code it?
Oh yeah. Big fan of color coding. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So, for me, I color code it based on different things, whether it's by prior. So it's kind of like a 2-dimension kind of system where, some colors represent priorities, some colors represent things that drain my energy, right? So something like the podcast right now, high priority in my life, probably one of the most important things in my life, but it's also very high energy consuming for me, right? Like after this, I'm exhausted, I'm getting dinner, I'm crashing.
Yeah.
How do you manage it? Like, do you break it by priority? Do you break it by activities?
I would love to say that I'm that good, that I break it by priority, but I definitely don't. I know when things are going to be high energy. So whether it is something like this, like I gain a lot of energy from doing podcasts or talks, but I physically am drained afterwards. So I have this like adrenaline high. It's the same as like a runner's high. After I give any talk, I have an adrenaline high for like 2 hours and then I crash really hard the next day. I need to recover. So I always know that I need to look at my calendar and say, okay, if I'm doing a talk on a Thursday night, Friday needs to be a bit more of a chill day. So no early meetings. Earliest meeting would be noon or 1 p.m. And then that way I give myself a bit of flexibility in the morning. If, I want to go in for 9:30 or 10, I have that. So I always like to look at what's happening on either side of an event or meeting. And especially, if I'm going to other cities doing pop-ups, I'll be in New York in September. So I'm always looking, okay, so what weekend before and after I'm away, what am I doing to make sure that I'm recharging myself? Whether that's a weekend in a city where I'm staying, in and I'm not doing anything, or maybe a weekend to a cottage, which technically is away, but it's a nice relaxing weekend.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, so, throughout your journey, have you ever burned out like that? Like, I think, talking about self-love and looking after yourself and caring after your mind, body, and like your spirituality, burnout's a very common experience for entrepreneurs, especially like sole proprietors like yourself. Like, has that happened and how do you manage it?
It definitely has, and I'm thankful it hasn't happened to the point where it's been like a 2 or 3 week burnout. It's been like a 2 or 3 day. So last summer, we were doing a pop-up in Montreal. I was preparing for New York, which is trade shows, meetings. And when we were in Montreal, unfortunately, our car got broken into and all my personal things got stolen. So thankfully, no inventory and nothing business related, but my computer and everything I had with me. So I literally was in one outfit for 4 days in Montreal doing a pop-up and, trying to present a business. So that definitely kind of rattled me and, dealing with insurance and dealing with I have a team there that I'm managing that I'm, taking care of and bringing back to the city. So that was, after that, I definitely had a burnout because I was like, what am I doing? What's going on? Things happen outside of your control all the time, but I definitely felt like I should have been more organized. So I took a self-care day where I literally put my out of office saying, I'm taking the day off for self-care. It's not a day off to go to the doctors or a day off to, go to a wedding. It's literally a day off to do whatever I want to take care of myself. And that was a really empowering thing to be able to say that's what I'm doing and feel, confident to say that, and then to actually follow through and do it was another thing too, because I was tempted to look at my email.
That must be harder.
Yeah, I was like, okay, what should I do? What do I look at? I think I deleted Instagram for half the day too, just so it wasn't on my phone. I wasn't looking at anything. So that was probably a more pivotal burnout in my life. This year has been really great business-wise. We've been growing a lot, but I've also had health problems this year. I had walking pneumonia for a few weeks. Find out that I have adrenal fatigue, which I'm learning is not fun. So I'm learning how to listen to my body more, because I think as an entrepreneur, you can actually prevent burnout by actually paying attention.
Interesting. So how do you pay attention? Like, do you just follow by gut? Do you meditate? Do you have daily reflection practices? How do you check in with yourself?
So I don't meditate. I'm really working on trying. I have not mastered meditation yet, but I definitely make sure that I schedule time in every day for myself, whether that's in the morning for 40 minutes or in the evening for 40 minutes, making sure that I have that, whether it's literally just putting on an old episode of Friends and sitting there, or journaling because I feel like I have so much in me that needs to come out. Sometimes it looks different. Another thing that I do is my health, because I've dealt with health problems before, is a number one priority for me. So I actually see a naturopath sort of guru. I wouldn't know how to explain it, but he's amazing. So I see him once a month, and I obviously don't have benefits that cover that. So for me, that's a priority, is making sure that I'm paying attention to my health and making sure that I'm taking care of myself to the best of my ability. So those few things, and also making sure that I'm spending time around good people. So there's definitely, you know, people in your life that can drain energy from you, that can suck it without their intention. They don't, you know, obviously realize that's what's happening. And then there's people that fill you up, that, you know, you end up laughing all night and you have the most fun Friday night, whether you're out or you're in, whatever you may be doing. So for me, this year has been really about quality versus quantity, and just narrowing in on, I know who's benefiting me and who I'm benefiting as well. Like when we share time together, we both leave feeling really great. And whether it's going for a run with a friend, just a 5K run, or playing board games with my friends, those are things that I really want to make a priority for. So that's a great way to help me kind of like balance myself again.
So for the folks who drain energy from you, right? So I think, you know, for the people who give you energy, that's, you know, that's obvious. You want to spend more time with them. You know, what about the people who are close in your life that you may have a long history with, folks you can't really avoid, but you know they're an energy like sucker? How do you deal with them?
So it's hard because you can't really tell someone that they drain your energy or they steal your energy.
Just imagine.
It's kind of insulting, even though it's not the intention. One thing that I always find is, again, when I look at my calendar and I know when I'm having a busy week versus a lighter week, I try to spend time with them when I know I'll have more energy. So it's not the week that I'm, you know, going to Montreal and I'm doing all these different meetings and I only have 2 evenings that week that I can actually see someone. That's not the week for me to schedule, you know, a hangout with them. It's the week that work is a little bit more flexible. Maybe I can leave work on, you know, Thursday at 4 p.m. and we can have a drink afterwards on the patio before we have dinner. And I try to look at it in ways that it can be a time that we both enjoy. And then there's sometimes I have friends that, you know, I love them and we've been friends for years, and it's been, you know, probably months of them being in a negative headspace that's been sucking my energy. And so I actually have to distance myself. And that's, you know, a conversation that sometimes we've had to have, and sometimes we don't actually go into the full detail of it. But I think there is something to be said for, you know, friend breakups are real, and it's not that you have to break up with a friend, but if someone's negative in your life, you need to make sure that you're protecting yourself. And if they're in a negative headspace and all they want to do is complain, especially when you're running a business and you're in charge of your 9 to 5 success and your, you know, 5 to 9 success, you need to be able to maintain that. So you do have to, you know, put a little bit of distance between yourself and other people at times.
For sure, right? Like, as I think back about, you know, the folks who, you know, like my friends and whatnot who, you know, tend to consume more energy out of me, I definitely still want to spend some time with them. So much like you, I think, you know, in the weeks or the periods where they're like the flow in the zone weeks where it's a heavy grind, you're banging things out constantly, I try to not schedule those kinds of social events in those periods. But then I also know that every couple of weeks I kind of have like my come down, I kind of chill out, and that's when I just slot them all in one by one, right? Like,
and you touch base, you catch up, and usually then they're not draining energy from you because you're in a better place, so it actually is enjoyable to be around them.
For sure. And then what about, so, you know, we're talking about draining energy, but what about getting energy? And more importantly, finding creative inspiration, right? Like a lot of the stuff you do, whether it's your actual product or your social media, there's a lot of creativity involved.
Yes.
Where do you find inspiration?
For me, I feel like I'm never not finding inspiration. So a lot of designers will, you know, find one source of inspiration, sort of build off of that. I'm always paying attention to so many different things. So in the early days when I really started designing, it was looking at how people move and how people interact with their clothes. So, you know, you can tell if a woman's confident in what she's wearing because she's not fidgeting with her clothes. She's not pulling at her neckline. She's not kind of flattening her sleeves, this or that. So even if it's a beautiful red dress and someone walks in wearing it, but they're constantly fidgeting at it, then you know that they're not comfortable or confident. Versus maybe it's jeans and a white t-shirt, but there's no fidgeting, and suddenly that person becomes more attractive because they're exuding confidence. So I always people watching. It's probably a little bit creepy, but that's why I have like the reflective sunglasses so no one can tell where I'm looking and what I'm doing. So yeah, I like to see how people are interacting with their clothes. Styles are changing so fast. So I always think about, okay, if we're designing something, how does it work with those clothes? Is it a high waist jean? Is it a low rise jean? Obviously your underwear has to sort of match that. So I'm always trying to think about how it can benefit, you know, my customer's life on a day-to-day basis. And then in terms of all other creative inspiration, like marketing, business growth, all of that, it's looking at other cool brands, looking at what else is happening in the landscape, whether it is in fashion or maybe it's in beauty or tech even, and just seeing what everyone else is doing and then trying to translate that into something that would work for the Mary Young brand. And then finding people that I can have these conversations with where I literally just word vomit towards them. And they sometimes will bounce back with ideas, or they just let me talk until I, you know, come up with an idea because I spoke it all the way through.
sure. So next thing I want to ask you about is mindset, right? I recently saw one of your recent TED Talks about your post-concussion period. So, walk us through that story in particular. What were some of those key tools and recommendations that you came out of it?
Yeah, so I had a concussion when I was 16. Yeah, I think it was 16 or 17 maybe. I think it was 16. I can't really remember, probably because of the concussion. So it wasn't a bad concussion, thankfully, but it was grade 1, which ended up, resulting in a few different things right away. I had headaches, dizziness, things like that. But about a month after my concussion, I woke up with a migraine that lasted 8 months. And that was the first migraine I've had in my life. And that's when I was diagnosed with post-concussion syndrome. So this can happen to many different people who have concussions. It doesn't happen to everyone, thankfully. So for me, it just is the way my body reacted. And I ended up losing my cognitive skills for about 6 of those 8 months, and having to understand how to read and write again in grade 11 in high school was not a fun time to be doing that. So a lot of that was, the early years was just trying to understand what was happening. And then I moved to Toronto. I was in university here. I was learning more, about the pain that I was dealing with and about post-concussion syndrome. And unfortunately, a lot of the doctors that I was working with weren't able to provide a lot of, benefit. It was, take this pain medication, try this one thing, but there was no real solution. So for me, at that point, it had been, I think, 7 years living in chronic pain of migraines, roughly 20, 25 days a month, which was not fun, to say the least. And I kind of got to a fork in the road where I realized that I had a responsibility to do something. Up until that point, I was, listening to doctors about what I should be taking. I shouldn't be working out. I can't be increasing my heart rate. Don't think too much. Think just the right amount. And it all felt like nothing was really giving. So I decided to actually kind of put the responsibility back on myself and realize that, my mind is my biggest asset. It's one of our biggest tools. And so I decided to change my mindset on what was happening. And instead of looking at myself as my pain was something that was against me, it was something that could help me empower to move through things, that it could actually fuel me to push harder, to prove to myself that I could do this or I could do that. And so a lot of it was, not feeling so alienated by what I was going through and realizing that my pain didn't define who I was. So for a long time, I felt like when I looked in the mirror or when I talked about myself or my pain, that it was Mary Young who had migraines, not Mary Young who suffers from migraines. So it felt like it became a very possessive thing when it wasn't something that I wanted to have ownership over. So I started to speak to my body more positively, actually out loud in the mirror, which is very odd. The first, week of talking to yourself eye to eye in the mirror, and you're like, this is very uncomfortable. But it started to work, and I continue to do that, and I still do that, to this day, that I'll have conversations with myself, whether it's out loud or internally. And for me, I actually talk to myself in third person because I find that a bit easier in order to have that conversation. So I can tell you're a little bit confused because everyone's like,
yeah, that's it. Like I can see the whole, talking to myself, especially if you're trying to amp yourself up before a meeting, you're trying to kill it, right? That makes
Usually
sense.
It's like, you got this, not like, Raph, you got this.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do for me, I found, was imagine myself kind of pulling out of the situation that I'm in, pulling myself out of the pain and removing myself and actually looking at myself, like being a separate person, or even being behind one of those like two-way mirrors that they have in the cop shows. And you're looking into a situation and you can see it clearly because you're not in it anymore. And so I think that's one of the biggest things, is being able to remove yourself and look at it, with unbiased perspective, and remove whatever, emotional triggers you have in that situation. So for me to do that, that's when I was able to speak to myself in third person. I would talk to myself as if I would talk to a friend. So if you came to me saying, oh, I hate my body, it's the worst, I'm always in pain, it's useless, I would say, no, your body can do so much. You walked here, you got here today, you're able to move, you're able to get out of bed every morning. There's so much more that your body can do. So being able to encourage myself to change my perspective, change my mindset. And then I ended up, writing down things that I was thankful for every day, starting to look at the good versus the bad. And after, a year of doing that, I could see such a huge difference in my life. And I actually started working out, which was, still against the doctor's orders, but taking control over my body, my physical body, felt so empowering, because for so long I felt betrayed by my physical body. So all those things combined really helps me understand that truly the biggest tool we have in our life is our mind. And we don't use most of it. I know there's some fact out there about how much percentage of our brains we actually use. I know it's nothing. So being able to actually control our thoughts and our mind and our outlook can bring you so much more positivity in your life.
That's awesome, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who's really fascinated by how the brain and neuroscience works, like there's new studies that come out every single year that often, you know, disproves or builds upon some of the old theories, right? So like out of curiosity, like where did you learn it? And then I think more importantly, how did you find the courage to actually take action on it, right? Like I think now as you look back, or you know, like we talk about these mindset tools and like they make sense, and as you hear, you know, like thought leaders and research talk about it, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. But when you're in the moment, when you're suffering, when you're stressed, and you're having these migraines, how did you get yourself to actually take action on these?
Yeah, so obviously talking about it now, it seems so easy. It's like, oh, I just changed how I thought, and then it was all great. For me, I was really at a fork in the road where I was going through a lot of different treatment. The last treatment that I was on, doctors were actually putting general anesthetic, like freezing on every vertebrae in my spine, down my neck, and in through my shoulders. So they wanted to basically freeze any potential pain wave going to my brain to see if that would stop the migraines. And I did that treatment 3 times and it did not work. And it was it was not a fun treatment to have, to say the least. I wasn't able to stand up straight for the 24 hours afterwards, dizzy and just unable to really take care of myself for 48 hours. And it didn't help with the pain by any means. And I was putting general anesthetic in my body and it felt like, what am I doing this for if it's not going to do anything? And after I did that a couple times, my doctor sort of sat me down and he said, you know, at this point, I don't really know what the next step is other than you quitting everything. And so in my 3rd year of university, my doctor said that I needed to quit school, that I needed to stop interning, that I needed to stop working my part-time job, and that my main priority should be getting better. And to me, I felt like, well, my priority has always been getting better. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be trying all these treatments and different drugs to see if it would work if that wasn't a priority. So I sort of felt like I kind of had 2 options. It was to quit or it was to try something different. And it was, you know, those stories, I mean, this is very dramatic, but those stories of, you know, when a mom like lifts a car because her kid's under it, that's kind of how I felt in a way. It was like I really had to decide that I had to push through, you know, that if I were to quit school, that means moving back to my hometown, which was about 5 hours away from Toronto, living with my mom, probably not working, not making any money, feeling sort of not existent in my world and, you know, the life that I've built in the city, and that I knew would be really hard for me to move back and try to finish everything that I already started. So
was that kind of what inspired you? Because I think, you know, for a lot of people, especially if they were in that position, they would either come up with excuses and rationalize why they should go do that, and then B, it's like, when a professional tells you to do that as well, it's like everyone's telling you, your friends, professionals, your mind, everyone's telling you to stop. So what made you go the other way?
I think for me, this was about, I think it was January or February. So I would have lost that semester that I was in if I were to quit at this point. So the way I looked at it was, okay, well, I'm going to finish this semester either way, whether I go into my 4th year, you know, this year, or I wait another year and quit and, you know, go home. That would be the question. But until I finish this semester, why don't I try something different? And up until this point, I'd been listening to all of, you know, professional guidance, professional advice, trying this medication, trying this treatment, and it wasn't proving to benefit me. And thankfully, I grew up in a family where my parents always openly talked about, you know, being thankful for things, looking at the positive side of things. My dad was sick my entire life, so I saw chronic pain in my life. And I saw how he worked through that. So I thankfully had a living example of being able to choose more life instead of choose the negative of what you've been handed. And there's, you know, that old saying, you don't choose what cards you're dealt, but you choose how you play them. And so in that moment, I sort of felt like, okay, this is my choice. I can see if something can shift and something can change. And I also knew that if I tried and, you know, this mindset technique or whatever didn't work, then I would quit and I would really focus in on that. But I also knew that I couldn't afford to live in Toronto where there's better healthcare than my hometown, and focus on just getting better if I wasn't working. So I really wanted to give this like one last shot. And so I really actually just started with the writing down things that was positive and, you know, things I was thankful for. That really came from my parents. So that was an easy step one. I always did that growing up, and I sort of lost it too. You kind of get caught up in life and you think that, you know, this person has that and I'm not here and life isn't what it should be, but we all have a very amazing life. If we're alive, you have a great life. So for me, it was just looking at the things I was thankful for, the days that I didn't have the worst migraine or that I could do something fun while still having a migraine. And then it became looking at my body instead of feeling like my mind and my body were separate, and actually bringing them back together and having them work together as one. And that's where, talking to myself in third person really became important. And then going to the gym was hilarious. When I first started, it was like, go on the elliptical for 10 minutes and then like heavy breathing off to the side for 25 minutes.
Right.
But it was good. I had friends that went to the gym all the time, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll try. And, I was 22 or 23 at the time, and it was the first time that I really went to the gym. I never went to the gym growing up. It was always different, activities or teams or sports that I was playing. So I was like, wow, there's like weights here. Like, what are free weights? What do you do with this? But I was able to learn, and I felt good using my body. Because I grew up playing sports, I always used my body. And for so long, I hadn't been using my body. And we always sit all day too. This is another thing. We're sitting, we're not moving. Our walk to work that's 10 minutes feels like it's too long. But our bodies are designed to be moved. They're designed to be, lifting things, and, your heart's supposed to be increasing and doing that. And it felt really good to feel like my body could do something. And after a few months, I really started to shift. And then within a year, I could totally see the results.
There's a saying about this guy, Jim Quick. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's like a neuroscience, brain hacking thought leader. And he always uses the phrase, when your when your body moves, your brain grooves. So just kind of like a reminder, like you got to work out. Well, not even just work out, but like you got to just keep moving, stay in motion, whatever it is, right? And I think, like myself included, I sit down a lot. So I always try to go for a walk, move, do something. I don't care what it is, anything, right? And then back to your story, I think, when you were going through that period, that was probably when I first met you, around that
I would say
third, fourth year time. And I must admit, I would have never known that was going on. And I think, in terms of how we view other people, whether it's on social media or in person, we often don't think there's anything wrong. If anything, we think they have everything together, right? I would have probably thought like, hey, Mary's starting her own brand. Good for her. She's so brave. Things are great for her. She's rocking it. Didn't know all this. So what's your message for people when it comes to not just, self-care and look after themselves, but also, creating the space for other people to do the same and accept themselves?
I think for me, a lot of people didn't know because there wasn't space to share that you were going through something hard. So I shared with my family. I, shared with a few friends that knew, like a friend of mine said, yeah, I remember we went to this concert and you were such a bore because you had a migraine. I was like, yeah, I was at a concert and I had a migraine. Of course I was a bore, trying not to throw up because the pain was so bad. We were at a concert. And it's interesting because until you have an open dialogue around what, thing you're dealing with, whether it's positive or negative, but usually when it is a positive thing, you have to have empathy for that person. And a lot of times people aren't taught empathy. It's a learned skill set. So empathy is me being like, oh, if I was in Raf's shoes, I would feel this way in that situation, versus why does Raf feel that way? It doesn't make any sense because I'm thinking about myself. I'm not actually thinking about you. So by opening a dialogue and having a conversation, we can start to understand each other and have empathy for each other. So for the longest time, I didn't see empathy, given to me in relationships, friendships, or romantic relationships outside of my family. And again, because I saw my dad deal with chronic pain, I was empathetic to him, and my family was empathetic to me going through something similar. And I also saw my dad push through chronic pain and act like he was fine, where most people didn't know that he was really sick as well. So I also had a great example of how to hold it together and not tell people what was going on. And that can be beneficial in some situations because, again, I didn't want to be constantly giving the pain that I was dealing with so much life that it became who I was, that it was something that I possessed versus it was something that was happening in my life. So as I started, kind of aging and getting into more friendships and feeling more comfortable to share, people started to understand. And for me, it's taken a long time. Like even talking about my migraines, I often would just say, oh yeah, I used to have migraines. And that was as far as the story would go. It wouldn't go into, the ground would be shaking and it would be like a strobe light and I wouldn't be able to see. And, I would be on codeine for days at a time because that's the only thing that would help with the pain. And I'd be writing, exams and the paper would be blurring because of the fluorescent lights that I was sitting in. That was a reality, but I never shared that because I didn't want people to either feel guilty or feel bad that they didn't know, or to have pity on me, or for them to just not care because they didn't understand. So now that we've had, more people talk about different things in life, whether it's, anxiety, depression, mental health, physical health, we start to understand these invisible illnesses that people deal with, and there starts to be a more open space to talk about it. And I think the biggest thing is, if you feel comfortable sharing with friends, even a little bit, try a little bit at a time, because you're going to be surprised when someone actually says, wow, I had no idea. And how does that make you feel? Or that must be really hard. How do you live your day-to-day life going through that? And suddenly you're going to say, oh, it's okay to talk about these things. And it's okay for someone else to want to open up about them. And so for me, I'm in a place where, I feel that sharing about my personal life and the struggles that I've had will encourage others to do the same. And again, hopefully open that dialogue. And that's a big focus, because if I could go back to, when we first met, and that you would have known, maybe our relationship could have changed and we could have gotten closer because we could have these type of conversations. But again, it's this idea that everyone's living, a great life. And again, that's our mind playing tricks on us. We just assume everyone has it better than we do.
Yeah, that's so important, right? I think I heard someone say in the past that empathy and vulnerability is good business, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not even just, I think on the human to human level is important, but, with your customers, like, that's really the whole mission and value that anchors and underpins your business. It's looking and thinking about these other people, and just because because you could relate as well growing up. And I think that empathy aspect is so important. Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, as a change maker, and as Mary Young, how do you define success?
For me, success is feeling full. So it goes back a little bit to what I personally want in life, is to live a very full life. So success doesn't necessarily mean that there's a lot of zeros in my bank account, which, would be nice. I'm not going to lie. It would be nice to go wherever I want, whenever I want. But feeling full and feeling good. So feeling full, it could be, just having one email from a customer saying, wow, I bought this bra and it changed the way I looked at myself and I feel really good. To me, I'm full instantly. That is the fuel to keep going. So it's the small things. It's, growing my team and having a team that works really well together and enjoys coming into work. I feel full because of that. So I try to go back again to sort of like ground level basics and really think about the simple things in life, because they do matter more. So for me, success really is finding what that full feeling is, because it does change all the time, but constantly looking to find that and succeed at that.
Yeah, that constant balance between, being grateful and thankful for what you have, but also, striving for more.
Exactly.
Right? And like wanting more and taking more from the table, so to speak. Because I think without progress, without the desire to want more, things get boring.
They
dull,
do. Yeah.
right?
And you want to be able to see your growth, and personal growth is such a huge aspect of feeling full.
For sure. So just being causing the time here, I want to jump into the rapid fire questions. So I'm going to fire over a couple of questions. Yeah. Let me know what the first thing that comes to mind. First one, do you have a morning ritual?
I do. It's not as A-type as it used to be. So I used to literally get up and do the same thing. But to me, my morning ritual is making sure I have a good breakfast.
Okay, what's in that breakfast, out of curiosity?
It used to be the same every day, but I'm trying to change it because I'm trying to be a little bit more go with the flow. Right now, it's usually a smoothie and a slice of toast or an egg on toast.
Awesome. What is one book you recommend everyone to read?
Oh, this is hard. One that I recently read that I felt empowered by was Shoe Dog, which is Phil Knight's story of Nike. So for a lot of people, we look at Nike as this huge, successful company that clearly is the best in the world, quote unquote. But at one point they were bouncing checks and they were literally crawling to success. So as an entrepreneur, it gives you perspective on, right now it feels really hard, but you never know where you're going to be in 30 years.
For sure. And for all my CA accounting friends, just FYI, Phil Knight was an accountant and look what he became.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're not stuck doing taxes forever, I promise. What is one decision that has had a profound impact on your life?
I think the biggest decision was to change my mindset. I don't think I would be able to run this business if I didn't learn the power of my mind years ago.
What is one question you want the audience to ask themselves?
I think the biggest question that I want everyone, and this is me included because I have to do this every day, is how can I be more open? So how can I be more vulnerable? How can I be more open to other people's experiences? How can I be more open to other people's, beliefs? Everything is just, we as a society become very insular and closed off in terms of our way is the best way. So opening up in so many different ways, I think, is a great thing, and actually challenging yourself by questioning how can I be more open is a really cool thing to do.
Last question. What is one actionable piece of advice that everyone should implement immediately to design their life to build momentum towards their version of success?
This answers it in a simple way, and then I'll kind of go in a little bit more in depth. But a friend of mine recently posted something after talking about mental health and his struggles with anxiety and depression, and he ended it on a note that said, "Life is beautiful if you choose to live it." And for me, that really stuck with me because we all have life. We all are moving through the day, we're all doing things, but not everyone is living their life. And I think the biggest thing to do is look at your life and say, how am I choosing to live? Because it's not just going to work and coming home, eating dinner, going to bed, getting up and hitting repeat. It's maybe holding a door for someone, maybe making an impact and volunteering on weekends, or, exploring the world and traveling. So I think it's challenge yourself to actually live, not just exist.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Hey everybody, it's Raf here, and thank you so much for listening to the Canvas series. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a rating and a review. As well, please share this with one person who you believe will absolutely benefit from this conversation. The Canvas series is all about content and community, and we absolutely need your help in getting the message out there. As well, feel free to follow along on social media at canvas.series for everyday discussions and content. Until next time, my friends.